neutral star systems in peril. Darth Maul and Savage Opress command the planet Mandalore through the puppet Prime Minister Almec, while they expand their criminal enterprise. With the Death Watch removed from power and the Jedi unaware of the villainous plot, nothing stands in the way of Darth Maul's vision for a vast criminal empire. We now find Duchess Satine imprisoned as her few remaining loyal subjects make a desperate attempt to rescue her.
Greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Tigar. Welcome to our 207th maliciously mauling episode of Mandovision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. Remember, the best way to find us is on social media. We are at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show at mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Well, how is everyone doing? You probably can tell by the sound of my voice, a little froggy today. I think it's just allergies, but it doesn't hit the ears real good. But, you know, we must podcast when we can podcast, so podcast we will. Basically because we have a massive episode to talk about today. We are here to close out Season 5's Mandalore trilogy. And this is possibly one of the finest episodes of the series. It is a standout episode. It has got a little bit of everything for the Star Wars fans across the board. And particularly for us, members of Buckethead Nation, we're here for anything to do with Mandalore. And this is a big, big turning point for the show. It's got action, intrigue, emotion. It sets up many events to come. It hits every single level that you could possibly want from your Star Wars episode of the Clone Wars. This has it all, and more importantly, it just has Obi-Wan Kenobi looking like a total BA. I don't know. That's ridiculous, but just looking like a totally awesome dude running around with a lightsaber in some Beskar that he borrows from a dude. It's awesome. It's a great episode, and I cannot wait to talk to you about it. So, that being said, let's just go ahead and get into the particulars for this episode, because I can't wait. Again, this one is massive. It's huge. It's epic. It's amazing. So, we are here for Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 5, Episode 16, The Lawless. Written by Chris Collins, directed by Brian Callen O'Connell. Our plot for this week's episode: Darth Maul has taken over leadership of Death Watch. Though the Jedi cannot officially interfere, Obi-Wan Kenobi travels to Mandalore to rescue Satine. Our primary cast for this week. You know who I'm going to say. James Arnold Taylor is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anna Graves is Satine Kryze. Sam Witwer is Darth Maul. Katie Sackhoff is Bo-Katan. Named for the first time ever, Bo-Katan. We have the final episode of Ian Abercrombie as Chancellor Palpatine / Darth Sidious, and boy does he bring the goods. That also means that we are in the official beginning of the Tim Curry era, of Tim Curry voicing Palpatine and Sidious. So just for the record, in case anyone was unaware out there, this episode and back in our first episode of the season, Revival, Tim Curry is uncredited for his participation to help fill out the episode as Palpatine, as Sidious. But starting next season, whenever we see Sidious, it is Tim Curry. So you will notice a bit of a voice change there, all right? This week we also have Clancy Brown as Savage Opress. Ahmed Abdi is Amos, and the Mandalorian Super Commando. Again, Ahmed Abdi, we all know Dr. Pershing from The Mandalorian, gets his first taste at the Star Wars Cup in this episode. Whit Hertford is Corky Kryze. Tom Kane is our narrator and Yoda. Julian Holloway is Almec. David Accord is the Mandalorian Super Commando. Brian George is Kai Adamundi. Stephen Stint is Masa Meda. And then that's basically it. That's what we got for you. Our Jedi fortune cookie for this episode: morality separates heroes from villains. All right, now that that's out of the way, it is time to dive into the episode proper, which means you need to do it. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Freeze! Hold it there!
Death Watch. Oh, it's been a long time.
It's okay, Auntie. She's on our side now.
Why are you helping now?
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
There was a time when we weren't enemies. Perhaps that time has come again. Come on, let's go.
I did forget to mention our original air date. The original air date for this episode is February 2nd, 2013. My apologies for that. But yeah, here we go. We get caught up. We're back on Mandalore. And now we're focusing on Maul's plan for revenge against Kenobi. And it involves Satine. And Maul and Almec orchestrating this escape attempt for Satine with the rebels that are now opposing Maul's rule of Mandalore. The sort of a faction that broke away after the death of Pre Vizsla in last week's chapter. And again, we know what's coming. Like, it's all kind of there. This is what Maul wants to do. He knows. Again, I guess I should say this. The way it's presented is like, it seems like it's a genuine escape attempt that Bo and Corky are orchestrating, not knowing that Almec and Maul are sort of allowing it to happen because they want Satine to get just far enough away that she can send the signal to Kenobi, that she can try to break communication with Obi-Wan and draw him to Mandalore, where Maul has all the power, all the resources, and can make Obi-Wan suffer in the way that Maul sees fit. So right off the bat, the stakes are huge. Now, and also, as I mentioned when we read the cast for this episode, we know that Bo Katan has a name, as Satine calls her Bo when she removes her helmet after killing Maul's Death Watch troopers, right? And it's also should be noted that this episode, Maul's factions become very, very distinct in their visuals, right? There's a lot of red on the forces that have sided with him, as well as we see the beginning of Mandalorians adapting horns to their Beskar helmets, right? So the distinction between Maul's Mandalorians and the other Mandalorians becomes very, very clear, as this episode also serves to kick off the new Mandalorian Civil War. And there are some amazing visuals coming up in this episode to sort of underscore the fact that Mandalore is at war with itself once again. And we'll talk about that. But let's get to the part where, let's go back. We have to sort of cover the escape attempt of Satine before she gets captured. Now, Bo is going to be able to get away. Corky's going to be able to get away. But Satine is brought back to bait the trap for Kenobi, but not before she's able to send the signal. And that's what's important. So I want to talk about the signal itself once it reaches the Jedi Temple. So let's go ahead and play that clip. And then we'll talk about we'll talk about the Jedi once again, because this is another element of why the Jedi sort of like this failing institution. And we'll talk about that. Let's go ahead and play the clip.
This is a message for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I've lost Mandalore. My people have been massacred, and Olmec is now the Prime Minister. I can't explain everything now, but Olmec has the support of the crime families. Obi-Wan, I need your help.
Your thoughts on this, Master Kenobi?
Satine has been at odds with the Death Watch for years. And according to a report from Padawan Tano, they are no longer in league with the Separatists. If there was a takeover on Mandalore, it was most likely an independent act, caused by the Death Watch alone.
Without involvement from the Separatists, this is an internal affair for the Mandalorians. I'm afraid we cannot help.
We cannot just hand Mandalore over to these crime families and let Satine become a martyr.
I'm afraid her decision to keep Mandalore neutral makes this situation difficult.
Understand your feelings, I do, Obi-Wan. But to take action, support from the Republic Senate, we will need.
You know what the Senate will decide. They will not send aid to a neutral system.
At this time, nothing more can we do.
All right, you all know what I'm going to say. I've said it before, I'll say it again. That the Jedi are a failing institution, in large part because of the decision, however long ago it was in the Order's history, to bind itself to the Galactic Republic. Because the rules of that governing body now dictate policy and terms to the Jedi and what they can and can't do, and how they are used as peacekeepers, essentially, right? Like the idea, the notion of, well, listen, it's not canon, so I'm about to cite some stuff that's no longer considered canon. But when you go back to no, not the Old Republic stuff, not then either. But if you look back at like the old Dawn of the Jedi stuff before there was a Galactic Republic, and you sort of get the notion of Jedi as the sort of as like, wanderers. They're sort of like masterless samurai in a sense. They're sort of Ronin, right? They travel from world to world and they do the right thing as they see fit, right? And I think when the Jedi are distilled down to that essence, they can be this sort of effective peacekeeper, right? Like they are bound by the will of the Force. They follow the will of the Force and they do the right thing. You know, they help the oppressed. They help people in need. When you have them tied to a failing governing body, a corrupt governing body, a governing body of any sort, again, the Jedi are effectively limited. They're cut off at the knees, and they just follow galactic policy, right? You know, we know that there's slavery across the galaxy, and the Jedi let it happen. Because the Senate says so, right? Like, oh, those are systems that we can't control, so we can't just have you dispatched out there and end slavery. That'd be insane. You know, it's another reason why the fall of the Jedi is ultimately inevitable. Fall of the Republic ultimately inevitable, and you know, again, not to go too far down the rabbit hole and to get off track too much, but I've mentioned one of my big personal complaints about the sequel trilogy is that by and large it looks like Luke is trying to do the same thing, bringing back this institution that works by the same rules as the one before it, and that annoys me. It's like Luke should have learned better. He should have known better, especially now that we know that he had Ahsoka Tano's ear at some point, and she could have passed on her insights to the failings of the Jedi, and we'll get to talk about more about that in the next batch of episodes that close out here, season 5 here, because again, we're really going to explore the cracks in the Jedi armor in the next 4 episodes after this one. So again, I'm sort of beating a drum that you've heard me beat before, but the Jedi, as great as they are in theory, in reality and practicality, being bound by the Republic holds them back, and it ultimately allows for the Sith to chop their head off, more or less. So, but we know Obi-Wan will not leave Satine to her fate. We know that Obi-Wan will intervene. Their connection to each other, their history with each other. Again, that's not been explored in any other medium yet. There's been no book. There's been no comic of it. We just sort of have the stories that we've made up in our minds to kind of fill in the gaps there of how deep their relationship is, of did Obi-Wan sort of violate his vows as a Jedi with Satine at some point? I mean, we know that they ultimately chose their paths, but doesn't mean they don't have that connection still to each other, that emotion for each other, as Satine will confess to at the end. And you know that Obi-Wan probably feels the same. He just can't verbalize it. And yeah, so he's going to come to her rescue, and he does so in the very familiar garb of Rako Hardeen and Anakin's old starship, the Twilight, that we haven't seen, I think, since season 4, maybe even season 3. But it seems to be in quite a state of disrepair. So as Obi-Wan lands on Mandalore, the ship is basically falling apart, which is sort of hilarious. And then using a tactic that we are familiar with in Star Wars, he lures on the Mandalorian inspection agent trooper guy, gives him the bum's rush, and hijacks some Beskar to walk around and blend in. And it is the color of Maul, right? And at this point, Obi-Wan doesn't know that Maul's there, doesn't know that Maul's involved. He just knows that Death Watch has taken over. This new color scheme on the Beskar doesn't seem to trigger him in any way. He just seems none the wiser for it. Now, before that scene took place, we do cut back to the Mandalorian Palace, where is it the Sundari Palace? I guess that might be more accurate. Palace on Sundari, in Sundari, where Maul and Elmec talk and confirm that the escape was allowed to happen to bait the trap for Kenobi. And it works quite well. Now, as Obi-Wan is making his way amongst the city, we do find out that Bo-Katan is nearby, is watching events as they unfold. But she's willing to let Obi-Wan go about his business, and he's going to make his way to the prison and have a little bit of a reunion here with Satine. And let's check that out.
Here to do more of your master's bidding?
I do my own bidding.
Obi-Wan! Are you alone?
Yes. The Jedi Council and Galactic Senate will be of no help to us here.
I trust you have an escape plan, then.
As always, my dear.
And there you go. I just really like the visual of Obi-Wan wearing the Beskar, putting on that bucket. It makes me insanely happy for some reason. And again, perhaps in Obi-Wan's past, when he was protecting Satine and they were on the run during the last Mandalorian Civil Wars, maybe there's another point where he's walking around in Beskar to protect Satine. How cool of an idea is that? The young Padawan Obi-Wan. In that Beskar protecting Satine. How cool. I love that idea. I'm into it. Make it happen. Let's chronicle this at some point. Let's fill in some of Obi-Wan's backstory. Why not? Let's get into it. Let's do it. But again, the trap is baited at this point, and it seems as though, the escape won't be easy, but Obi-Wan has a plan. He's going to try his best, but a certain somebody arrives that really throws a monkey wrench into Obi-Wan's plans. So this is right after the Twilight's been destroyed and they've crashed. Obi-Wan on the ground, he's moved some wreckage off of Satine to keep her safe, but now things get a little unexpected.
No, it can't be.
We meet again, Kenobi. Welcome to my world. Take them back to the palace.
Well, that can't be good. That can't be good at all. So now we'll cut back to the palace. Maul on his throne, Satine, his prisoner at his side, and Obi-Wan before him, helpless. And we get into a really just listen to the conversation. I don't even want to try to summarize it. Just listen.
Your noble flaw is a weakness shared by you and your Duchess. You should have chosen the dark side, Master Jedi. Your emotions betray you. Your fear, and yes, your anger. Let your anger deepen your hatred.
Don't listen to him, Obi.
Quiet.
You can kill me, but you will never destroy me. It takes strength to resist the dark side. Only the weak embrace it.
It is more powerful than you know.
And those who oppose it are more powerful than you'll ever be. I know where you're from. I've been to your village. I know the decision to join the dark side wasn't yours. The Night Sisters made it for you.
Silence! You think you know me? It was I who languished for years, thinking of nothing but you. Nothing but this moment. And now, the perfect tool for my vengeance is in front of us. I never planned on killing you, but I will make you share my pain, Kenobi.
Remember, my dear Obi-Wan. I've loved you always. I always will.
Oh, that gets you right in the heart. Oh, it does. How can it not? Darth Maul, using the Darksaber, kills Satine in front of Kenobi. A helpless Obi-Wan Kenobi who can do nothing to stop it. I get you. It's so good. In that speech, Maul talks to Kenobi, referencing his anger, and his fear, his hate, all those dark side emotions, and the look that crosses Obi-Wan's face is pained, because I fully believe that in that moment he remembers, he goes back to Naboo, to their first encounter, to that moment when Obi-Wan slices Maul in half. And he does it, and it's been chronicled in material in the past. Whether that material is still canon, not certain of. But, it's been widely acknowledged, widely accepted that part of Obi-Wan's history is that in that moment, when he went through that laser barricade after Qui-Gon Jinn had been murdered by Darth Maul, that Obi-Wan fights with anger. Obi-Wan is not there Obi-Wan's there for vengeance, right? Another dark side emotion. And I think Maul touches on that in this moment. And we see the growth of Obi-Wan's character, because he looks back on that and he winces. And he knows how close he came to succumbing to the dark side. And so that's why that's a really powerful moment right there, why it's really powerful for each of those characters to deliver. Maul's kind of like delivering these verbal blows to Kenobi. But we see how much Kenobi's grown since then, and how he's sort of shamed by that action when he was much younger. And then, obviously, the moment with Satine. Again, it's the Darksaber that does the deed, and her confession to her never-ending love for him. Again, it's just really excellent stuff, and Anna Graves does a fantastic job delivering the line with all the emotion in the world. And again, the animation here, the look on Obi-Wan's in his eyes as she says these things to him, knowing that he very, very likely feels the exact same way but can't vocalize it. He just doesn't have the words to admit that. It stings him in a way, and Maul delights in his suffering as he holds her in his arms as she dies. Maul delights. He soaks it up like water, like a man in the desert drinking water. He just soaks it all up. He wants it all, give it all. But there is a consequence to this action, and that is Maul's sort of glee at this moment, his delight in the inflicting suffering on another being, is detected in the Force. It is detected by his former master on Coruscant, as Chancellor Palpatine, as Darth Sidious detects the presence of his former apprentice and decides it's time to go to Mandalore to pay him a visit. And that's where this episode becomes even more than just a culmination of the events on Mandalore itself. It reminds us that, oh no, the Sith, they take that Rule of Two thing crazy serious. And it's just, again, this is when the episode sort of becomes two things at once. Right? Now we have to get Obi-Wan off of Mandalore so that he can report back to what's happened there, that a Sith Lord is running the show in Mandalore. And that now is the time for some sort of intervention here, or else all is lost. But now it also becomes about the Sith themselves and the constant struggle for being the top dog. And it just gets so much better than it already has been. And it's already been pretty darn great to this point. This is also when a lot of things begin to happen at once. Again, the arrival of Palpatine on... or Sidious, let's just call him by his true name at this point, right? Sidious's arrival on Mandalore, him choking those Mandalorian guards out. It reminds me in a lot of ways of Luke's entrance in Return of the Jedi when he's choking out the Gamorrean guards. But just because it's just cold, it's silent. He doesn't make any noise, doesn't try to vocalize anything, just chokes him out and moves about his business, right? Then we cut this back with Bo-Katan freeing Obi-Wan, helping him to escape, and sort of the realization that not only does Maul want Kenobi back in custody, but this is the death of Satine, the escape of Obi-Wan Kenobi. These are the events that really spark off the next Mandalorian civil war here. And this shot as Bo and Obi-Wan run through this corridor, and this giant blast door opens up, and we see Mandalorians just engaged in brutal combat with one another, is stunning visually. It is spectacular and glorious, and again, all the things that Star Wars is. And also, you have to see what Obi-Wan used a jetpack in this sequence a little early on, and it was rad. But let's go ahead and, again, this blast door opens up, and we just see Mandalore being blown apart by other Mandalorians. Check it out.
Maul must really want you dead.
You have no idea.
Boom. So yeah, there we go. And we're going to get to the moment here where the path is set. We're going to see Obi-Wan make the escape. But again, a lot of great action in the sequence. So pay attention to things, because a lot of the things that we see in this episode are things that we saw in season 3 of The Mandalorian. The Comrade class cruiser opening up, having that belly open up, and Mandalorians descend down from the sky. Again, we saw that in live action this past season in The Mandalorian. You see a lot of it for the first time here, but to then see it years later brought to life on The Mandalorian is just it's just stunning. It's a stunning moment all around, and the action from this point forward in the episode is beyond anything. It's so good. Again, you're getting it on two fronts, because you're having more of a straightforward conflict between Mandalorians, but you're about to get conflict between rival Siths, and that's fun too, but in a whole different way. And to follow that up, that is the next scene, right? We go back to the palace, Maul in the throne room, this darkened throne room with Savage Opress, and just again we get one of two callbacks to previous Star Wars films, right? This first callback is going all the way back to A New Hope. So check this one out as Sidious makes his... Well, we'll let Maul take it away.
I sense a presence I haven't felt since... Master. Master.
I am most impressed to see you have survived your injuries.
I used your training, Master, and I have built all this in hopes of returning to your side.
How unfortunate that you are attempting to deceive me.
Master?
You have become a rival!
And from there, the awesome lightsaber combat begins. Maul with his blade, Opress with his blade, his double-sided lightsaber, and Sidious with two sabers in his hand, and the combat is awesome. But now we cut back to the escape of Obi-Wan Kenobi from Mandalore with the help of Bo-Katan Kryze, and let's just let them summarize everything that's about to happen next, because it's a big turning point here. And this is our next callback. This goes back to Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, the moment when Obi-Wan realizes that Anakin is the father of Padme's children. So check it out.
Go back to your Republic and tell them what has happened.
That would likely lead to a Republic invasion of Mandalore.
Yes, and Maul will die. But Mandalore will survive. We always survive. Now go.
You're Satine's sister, aren't you? I'm so sorry.
And they did set that up earlier in the episode where she tells Obi-Wan to find her sister. And she's like, who's your sister? And so they put this all into place. It was there from the beginning. And again, that's just a lovely moment. James Arnold Taylor delivering that line, just reminiscent of the way Ewan McGregor did in Episode 3. And now we cut back. Obi-Wan makes his escape, and now we go full bore into Sith combat. And it is equally awesome stuff. Again, this is that Star Wars lightsaber battle that you want. You want Sith battling Sith. This is awesome. More of this, please. And there's some great dialogue here. Let's just get to the chase, though. The moment that really gets it right, that really brings it home, is Sidious when he kills Savage Opress, when he kills Maul's brother, and Maul. He suffers the way that he just made Obi-Wan suffer. So the two characters continue to mirror each other in many ways, Obi-Wan and Maul. The way their sort of fates are mirroring each other, I guess is the best way to put that. It's very interesting. It's very fascinating stuff. And again, you don't mess with the supremacy of Sidious, right? Like, at no point do we feel that any of his apprentices have the skill set to rival him, to take him, to eliminate him. You know, they've tried chronicling this in the Darth Vader comic books over at Marvel. You know, Vader has tried a couple different times to up the ante, but he's never able to get the drop on the Emperor. It just doesn't happen, which is always interesting to me because as powerful as they want us to think Vader is, he is a character that, I'll use the word again, is a tad handcuffed because of his dependency on cybernetics particularly, but also because of Sidious is just a reservoir of knowledge, of dark side knowledge that he can't seem to touch. But let's stay focused on this, and let's hear what the moment is when they happen. Because again, some great dialogue in here. Some of the last stuff from Ian Abercrombie. So we should highlight that, as they did dedicate this episode to his memory, which is good stuff. So we're going to go ahead and play it from the moment where Savage Opress is dying. Maul leaps to his side, much the way that Obi-Wan did with Satine. And we see that the Night Sister magic swirling off the corpse of Opress. Because remember, he's infused with Night Sister magic to be big, bad, and strong, right? So let's check this out. And then we'll hear Palpatine just cackle as he puts his former apprentice back into check.
Brother, I am an unworthy apprentice. I'm not like you. I never was.
Remember, the first and only reality of the Sith. There can only be two, and you are no longer my apprentice. You have been replaced.
All right, so now we're about to get into some very serious combat between Maul and Sidious, master versus apprentice, former apprentice. Maul wielding the his own red-bladed lightsaber and the dark saber versus Sidious's two red sabers. Meanwhile, in the background, it's sort of in the style I believe it's in the style of was it Picasso's Guernica, I believe, but it's a mural of Mandalorians versus Jedi. It's kind of beautiful in a weird, unique way, right? As these two Sith battle in front of it, and it's sort of representing of the history of Mandalore versus the Jedi, and then we have and you have the embodiment of Sith versus Sith in the foreground here, and it's super, super cool. And again, as great as Maul might be, he's no match for his former master, who just mops the floor with him, in essence. And we'll hear those final moments right now.
Have mercy. Please, please.
There is no mercy. Do not worry. I'm not going to kill you. I have other uses for you.
And that is the end of Maul, of Mandalore, of all of it. Because again, there were plans. This is when things get crazy, right? Shortly after this season wraps up, the Disney merger, the acquisition, all these things happen, and Disney's going to cancel Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Even though production was underway, they were making episodes happen for season 6. And what happens next is the big 4-parter Maul episode arc that they had planned out for season 6 of the Clone Wars doesn't happen. The show's canceled before production can begin on that episode. So, we sort of chronicled it as we've gotten to the episodes that sort of are relevant to the things that didn't happen in season 6. We've talked about the big Asajj Ventress arc that was planned for season 6 that got turned into the Dark Disciple novel. We talked about the episode that was going to chronicle the battle between Cad Bane and Boba Fett, and how that didn't happen. You can see animatics of that on YouTube, I believe. You get an idea of the conflict between those two, the history between those two that sort of plays out down the road in the Book of Boba Fett when they meet up again, because it feels like that unproduced episode is still very much part of their history. And then you have this Maul arc, this 4-parter Maul arc that was supposed to happen in season 6 that went unproduced, and then was later adapted into comic book form by, I believe at the time it was still Dark Horse that did it, but you can find it under the Marvel stuff now. And it's Darth Maul, son of Dathomir. Check it out. It's really cool. And incidentally enough, it will be the subject of our next episode, because I do believe it is important to talk about that comic book adaptation for the next step in arcs in Maul's arc, right? Because at the time when that comic book came out, a lot of fans, we were left hanging. We didn't know where things were going. We didn't know where was the Siege of Mandalore? When are these things going to happen? And that was sort of, that comic book sort of helped us bridge the gap a little bit, because it was just based on some unproduced screenplays. But luckily now we have season 7 and we've seen the Siege of Mandalore. So it's fun to go back and we'll cover the period of the Son of Dathomir books. Because I think by the time, like I said, by the time we get to season 7, we're gonna want to know all these things anyway. So let's just do it next week. We'll talk about the comic book series, and it's a good one. My memories of it are very fond. So that will be what we do next before we get hot and heavy into the Ahsoka Tano 4-episode arc that closes out this season in spectacular fashion. This is 10 buckets. It's beyond anything. Don't try to fight me on it. Don't at me, bro. I'm not gonna hear it. It's 10 buckets, and that's the way it is. All right, I think that's all I have to say about it. Other than it's spectacular, it's awesome. Watch it. Watch it now. Remember to find us on social media. We are at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. A great way to support the podcast is by giving us 5-star reviews on whatever format you're listening to. They really do help small independent Star Wars shows like us stand out, not get lost in the shuffle beneath all those, corporate-produced Star Wars podcasts where they have all the fancy advertisements and monies, because we don't have those things here. This is just about love. Love of the Star Wars, love of the Bucketheads themselves, the Mandalorians. And we're so glad you're here. Thanks for supporting the show. As always, you are the best. Buckethead Nation, you continue to be beyond anything I could have ever hoped for. Thank you so, so much. My name is Tom, Nargai Tom, and this is Mandovision. Thanks for being here. Continue to be amazing Star Wars fans to everyone out there. Support each other. Recognize each other as we all have different opinions, but each person's opinion is valid, and they do not need to be slapped down for being different from yours. So continue to be amazing Star Wars fans to everybody around you. We'll be back very, very soon. Again, we're talking Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir next, and then the amazing 4-part episode to close out Season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars, focusing on Ahsoka Tano herself. This is the turning point for her, folks. Get ready. Keep your buckets on. All right. We'll be back next time. Remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.